Sometimes it don't take much to stir up the past. Just the other day, I was sitting by the window with a cup of weak coffee, the kind that's more memory than flavor, and the smell of burnt biscuits came drifting in from somewhere down the street. Land sakes alive, I hadn't thought of that smell in years. Most folks would turn up their noses at it, but for me, it was like a time machine. Took me right back to 1947. I was just a skinny little thing in a hand-me-down dress, with a patch on the front and scuffed up knees. We didn't have much. Lord have mercy, we didn't have a pot to pee in, but that smell meant Mama was trying to make something out of nothing. Again, you young folks wouldn't understand, not really. These days, y'all got pantries with 20 kinds of cereal and refrigerators that talk to ya. But back in my day, well, if you wanted something sweet, you made do with stale bread and a dab of molasses. And if the biscuits burned, you scraped off the black and ate 'em anyway. Waste not. Why not, that's how we did it in those days. And you didn't dare complain, neither. You said thank you, bowed your head, and counted your blessings, even if all you had on your plate was cornbread crumbs and pinto beans. Funny thing is, that smell, that little nothing of a thing, it opened a door in my mind I thought had long since closed. And I've been sitting with it ever since. There's this one memory in particular, a night I never talk about. I reckon I buried it deep, way down under all the busy years of raising babies and making ends meet. But sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and my old bones won't let me sleep, that memory comes and sits beside me like an old friend. And lately, I've been thinking, maybe it's time I told someone. Maybe it's time y'all heard about it. Not 'cause I'm looking for pity or applause or nothing fancy like that. No, ma'am. Just because it matters. Because hunger, real hunger, it don't just gnaw at your belly. It lives in your spirit. It teaches you things about kindness, about grit, about how love can stretch further than food ever could. And that's something worth remembering, don't you think? Now, I ain't gonna lie, it ain't the prettiest story. There's a little pain in it, and a whole lot of quiet strength. But I promise you this, by the end of it, you'll understand something most folks have long forgotten. You'll understand how we survived, not just with food, but with each other. So, if you'll sit with me a spell, just long enough for this old woman to get it off her chest, I'll tell you what really happened that winter after the war. When the snow came early and the pantry was bare, and the only thing we had plenty of was hope. And biscuits. Burned biscuits. You ready? Because once I start, I don't reckon I'll be able to stop. I was just a little girl back then. Must have been 8 or 9, maybe younger. Funny how the years blur together. But that old front porch of ours, I remember it plain as day. The wood was gray and splintered, creaked under every step like it was sighing with age. We lived in a small house outside a dot-on-the-map town in Tennessee, not much more than a general store, a post office, and a church with a white steeple that touched the sky. Back then, Sunday was still sacred, and folks waved to each other whether they knew your name or not. That was just the way things were. We lived on a patch of land Daddy tried to farm, bless his heart. Red clay dirt that cracked in the summer and froze solid in the winter. We grew a little corn, some beans, and if the rain was kind, a mess of tomatoes. Didn't have tractors or machines, just a mule named Bessie and hands that worked till they bled. Mama kept chickens and churned her own butter, wore her apron like a uniform, and hummed hymns while she cooked, like leaning on the everlasting arms. Lord, I can still hear it if I close my eyes. There was 5 of us kids, and I was the middle one, not the baby, not the oldest, just stuck somewhere in between, trying to be heard over the racket. We wore hand-me-downs patched so many times, you couldn't tell what color they used to be. Shoes were a luxury. I had 1 pair, and I only wore 'em to church and funerals. Rest of the time, I went barefoot, even in the winter sometimes, with my toes tinted purple. But I didn't complain. None of us did. That's just how we lived. We made do with what we had. We didn't have much in the way of money, but we had rhythm, a kind of quiet rhythm. Wake with the sun, chores before breakfast, school if there was time, supper when Daddy came in from the field. We ate what was growing or what we could trade. Cornbread and buttermilk, mostly. Pinto beans with a hunk of onion. Sometimes if a neighbor came by with fresh eggs or sorghum, it was like Christmas morning. We didn't call it poverty. We didn't even know that word. We called it life. I used to lie on the grass behind the house, look up at the sky, and dream big dreams. I believed the world was kind. I believed folks always told the truth. I believed if you did good, good would come back around. And maybe that's what kept me going when things got hard. I held on to that, to the idea that no matter how small we were, we mattered. That even when our bellies were empty, our hearts didn't have to be. I remember thinking, one day I'll grow up and live in a house where I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want. I thought maybe I'd become a school teacher, wear clean dresses and carry a leather satchel. Or maybe open a little diner with checkered tablecloths and serve peach pie like Miss Louise used to make before her husband ran off. My dreams were simple, but they were mine. And yet I never could have known how those early years, those bare feet and cold mornings, those days when we split one biscuit 5 ways, how they'd shape every part of me. They planted something deep down, a kind of quiet strength, the kind that don't show until you got nothing left but grit and grace. I was just a child. I didn't understand much, but I knew this. Kindness was everything. And family, even when we were yelling and fighting and getting on each other's nerves, family was the only thing that ever really mattered. I believed in coming back home. I believed that love, real, honest love, always finds its way. It was the summer of '49, hot enough to fry an egg on the porch railing, and the air was thick with that southern stillness that makes even the flies lazy. We hadn't seen a drop of rain in weeks, and the corn was starting to curl at the edges like paper left too close to the fire. I remember that day so clear, not 'cause anything big was supposed to happen, but because of who showed up and how everything changed after that. Mama had sent me out back to fetch more kindling for the stove. We was making stretch soup, again, mostly water with a potato or 2, if we were lucky. I had dirt on my dress, sweat sticking to my neck, and I was humming something low under my breath, maybe, "You Are My Sunshine," I don't rightly recall. I was halfway back to the house when I heard it, 3 knocks. Slow, polite, almost hesitant. We didn't get many visitors. Folks mostly kept to themselves unless someone was borrowing sugar or bringing bad news. I came around the side of the house, kindling in my arms, and there he was. A tall young man, not more than 16 or 17, standing on our porch with a cap in his hand and a nervous look in his eye. He had hair the color of wet sand and a sunburn across his nose like he'd been walking a while. His shirt was too big, pants too short, and his shoes were scuffed near to nothing. But it was his eyes that caught me, green like the river after a storm, sharp and soft all at once. Mama opened the door, and before she could ask who he was, he said, "Ma'am, I don't mean to be a bother. I'm just passing through, looking for work. I can chop wood, fix fences, anything you need." His voice was tired but kind, and you could hear in it he'd been turned away more than once. Mama looked him up and down, not saying a word. That's how she was, measured, never quick to speak. Then she nodded once, stepped aside, and said, "Well, don't just stand there. Boy, you look like you could use a drink and a biscuit." I don't know why, but right then, my heart did this little flutter. Just a quick stammer, like a bird talking off sudden from a branch. I couldn't explain it, not then. I was only 12, still thinking boys were mostly noisy and dumb. But something in me knew deep down that this wasn't just any knock on the door. His name was Eli. No last name, or at least none he ever gave us. Said he'd left home 2 towns over when his daddy took to drinking after the war and his mama passed on. He'd been drifting since spring, talking odd jobs, sleeping in barns, trying to find a place that felt like something steady. Mama put him to work that very afternoon, and he never once complained, not about the heat, not about the food, not about the hard ground he slept on out back. He didn't say much, but he'd hum when he worked, and sometimes I'd catch him smiling at the sky like he knew something the rest of us didn't. I started finding reasons to be outside when he was chopping wood, taking berries that didn't need picking, sweeping dirt off the porch like it'd stay clean longer than 5 minutes. I wasn't fooling anyone, not even myself. Eli wasn't just a stranger looking for work. He was a shift in the wind, a quiet question in my heart. He brought with him a tenderness our home hadn't felt in a long while. And even though I didn't know it then, that summer marked the start of a whole new chapter in my life, one I still carry with me, tucked in that soft place memories go when you're trying not to cry. I didn't understand why my heart beat faster when he looked my way, or why I blushed when he said my name like it mattered. But I knew this. Something had changed, and it started with 3 knocks on a hot summer day. It was early November when the cold set in earlier than usual and meaner. The kind that slips under the door and settles in your bones no matter how many quilts you pile on. I remember waking up one morning, breath fogging in the air, and Mama standing by the stove with her arms wrapped round herself. The fire had gone out in the night. We were down to our last pile of kindling, and Daddy hadn't come home. He'd gone out 2 days before, said he was heading to the mill in town to ask for work. Lord knows he was a proud man, and when the crops failed that year, it hurt him bad, not just in his hands, but in his heart. He felt like he'd let us down, though we never said so. We knew he was trying. But when 2 days passed and he still hadn't come back, well, something shifted in Mama's eyes. I'd never seen her look that far away before, like she was searching for something out past the fields that wasn't coming back. And Eli, well, he stayed. Kept chopping wood, fixing fence posts, doing what needed doing. But I saw the way he looked at the road sometimes, like maybe he should be walking it again. I didn't blame him. He wasn't ours to keep. But Lord, I wanted him to stay anyway. That was the week we ran out of flour. I don't mean we were low, I mean the bin was empty, scraped clean, not a speck left. And Mama, she stood there holding the lid like it had betrayed her. No flour meant no biscuits, no gravy, no pie crust, just beans, and not even much of those. She didn't say a word, just turned around, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked out to the porch. I followed her, but I didn't speak, didn't have the words. I was scared, and I didn't know how to be scared out loud. I'd always thought grown-ups had it figured out, that they knew what to do when things got hard. But watching Mama that day, I saw it plain. She was just as lost as the rest of us. Later that night, the preacher came by. Not with comfort, mind you, but with judgment. Said he heard we had a boy staying out back, and it wasn't proper. Said folks were talking. Said Mama had a duty to her reputation and her daughters. I watched her nod politely, eyes hard as flint, lips pressed tight. When he left, she didn't cry. She just sat down, took off her shoes, and said, "Let em talk. We're feedin' who's hungry." I wanted to hug her, but I didn't. I didn't know how. Inside, I was boiling. I was mad at the preacher, mad at the cold, mad at Daddy for disappearing, mad at God for letting it all happen. But mostly, I was ashamed. Ashamed of that little part of me that wondered if the preacher was right. if we were doing something wrong, that maybe we'd brought this on ourselves. I didn't say it, of course. I kept it all knotted up tight in my chest, like a secret I couldn't bear to speak. I felt like I was split in down the middle, one half wanting to be good and obedient like the Bible said, the other half screaming that this world was too cruel to play by the rules. Eli never asked to leave. He just worked harder. Started rising earlier than the sun, his hands blistered from the axe, his back bent but steady. And I started watching him not just with young eyes, but with a deeper ache. I didn't understand it then, but looking back now, that was the start of the war inside me, between what I was taught to believe and what I knew in my bones was right. I remember that morning like it happened just yesterday. The sky was gray, thick like soup, and the wind had a bite to it that stung your cheeks and made your bones ache. I was hanging laundry on the line, our only good sheet, patched and thin, flapping like a tired flag, when I saw Mama come from the road with her shoulders hunched, her eyes set on the ground. She had something clutched in her hand, but I couldn't see what. She didn't say a word when she passed me, just walked straight into the house and closed the door behind her. No slam, no fuss, just this quiet, heavy finality. I didn't follow right away. I don't know why. Maybe I felt it in the air, that stillness that wraps around you like a shroud when something's gone wrong. Maybe I didn't want to know. But when I finally stepped inside, Mama was sitting at the table, the same table we'd prayed over and cried over and tried to fill with love when there wasn't enough food. Her hands were folded on her lap, and her apron, the one she wore every day, stained with years of meals and worry, was bunched up around her like armor. And that's when I saw it, a letter, folded, unopened, tucked under the string of her apron pocket like she couldn't bring herself to read it. I stood there frozen, watching her like a stranger. Then she looked up, and I'll never forget what she said. "He's gone, May." Just like that. Like she was setting down a plate of beans. Calm, steady. Except her eyes. Her eyes were hollow, like someone turned off the light behind them. I didn't understand at first. Gone where? Gone to work? Gone for good? But she didn't say more, and I didn't ask. I just reached for the letter and opened it with hands that were already shaken. The words were smudged, maybe from rain, maybe from tears, but I read every one. Daddy had been found 2 towns over, died behind a store, cold and alone. No money, no ID. Just a note with Mama's name and our address, written in his handwriting. Time didn't just stop. It shattered, like a dropped plate, sharp and sudden. I heard the clock on the wall ticking, and then nothing. Just silence. Not even the wind dared speak. I sank down onto the floor and felt the cold crawl up through my skirt. I didn't cry, not then. There wasn't room. My whole body was a tight knot of disbelief and fury and guilt. Oh, the guilt. I'd been mad at him, you see, for leaving, for not sending money, for making Mama carry the weight of everything. And now he was gone, and I couldn't take any of it back. Mama sat still as stone. I wanted her to scream, to wail, to say something, but she didn't. Just looked out the window like she was trying to remember where the light used to fall. And Eli, bless his soul, stood in the doorway, not saying a word. He took off his cap, bowed his head, and stepped outside. Gave us space, gave us quiet, gave us a kindness I'll never forget. That day changed me, not just because I lost my daddy, but because I realized the world don't stop for your pain. It don't wait for you to be ready. It just keeps moving, and if you want to survive it, you gotta find a way to move with it. I buried part of myself that day, the part that believed everything would always work out in the end, the part that thought love was enough. And in its place, I grew something else. A quiet strength, the kind that holds you steady when the wind comes howling. The kind that keeps your feet on the ground when your heart wants to run. After Daddy died, the house got quieter. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, like when the sun's settin' and the porch creaks gentle under your feet. No, this was the kind of quiet that pressed in on you, like a heavy coat you couldn't shrug off. It wasn't just the hush of voices, or the way we moved softer through the rooms. It was deeper than that. Like even the walls knew grief had taken up residence. I remember waking in the middle of the night, listening for the sounds I didn't realize I'd gotten used to, his boots by the door, his cough in the other room, the low rumble of him clearing his throat before speaking. But there was nothing, just the wind, and the tick of the old clock. Mama refused to wind anymore. We still ate, still worked, still fed the chickens and hung the laundry and mended what needed mending. But it was like moving underwater. Everything was slower, heavier. I didn't talk much, not even to Eli. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't trust myself not to cry. And I wasn't ready to cry yet. Crying felt like admitting he was really gone. So I kept it in, folded it up tight like one of Mama's clean dish towels, and tucked it into the back of my soul. Mama changed, too. She didn't smile as much, didn't hum her hymns. Her eyes had this far-off look, like she was always searching for something, just past the treetops. But every night, without fail, she'd light the stove and make stretch soup, thin broth, a few chopped potatoes, sometimes just onion and salt. She served it like it was a feast, always with that same soft touch, the way her hand brushed your shoulder as she passed your bowl. It was her way of saying we were still a family, even if we were missing a piece. Eli stayed. I think that surprised us all, even Mama. He didn't ask for nothing, didn't expect gratitude. He just stayed, fixed what broke, worked the land the best he could, and sat at our table like he belonged there, which, over time, he did. But even with him there, I felt a gap inside me I didn't know how to name. It wasn't just the loss of Daddy. It was the loss of how I used to see the world. I'd always believed, deep down, that life was fair. That if you worked hard, stayed kind, and prayed before bed, things would turn out all right. But after Daddy, that belief started to fade. Not all at once, just little pieces, like petals falling off a flower. I still believed in good, still believed in people, sort of. But the world had edges now, sharp ones, and I had to learn how to live with them without getting cut too deep. There was one afternoon, I remember it clear. I went to the creek by myself, sat on the rocks with my feet in the water, and let the cold rush numb me. I looked up at the sky, all wide and blue and uncaring, and whispered, "What now?" I didn't expect an answer. I wasn't sure if I even wanted one, but saying it out loud made it real, made the silence inside me echo a little less. I think that was the moment I stopped being a child. Not when Daddy died, not even when I read that letter, but sitting by that creek, trying to feel anything but numb. That's when I knew I had to keep living, not just existing, living, even if it hurt, even if it meant carrying sorrow with me like a shadow. Life went on, it always does, but I wasn't the same girl anymore. And maybe that's the quiet truth about growing up. It don't always come with birthdays or milestones. Sometimes it comes with silence, with loss, with a question that don't have an answer. It wasn't sudden, like a bright sunrise that bursts through curtains and chases away shadows. No, hope returned soft, quiet-like, more like the slow melting of frost off a window pane after a long, cold night. It was early spring, and the days had started stretching just a bit longer, letting warmth seep gently into the ground again. Mama still didn't talk much, and the house was still quieter than before, but something had started to shift inside us, little by little. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, Eli had come back from town with 2 jars of honey, said he'd done some work for Mr. Ellis at the store, fixin' shelves and mendin' a gate. Lord, honey was a luxury then, something we hadn't tasted in months. I watched Mama's eyes widen just a little when Eli placed the jars on the table. She touched the glass softly, like it might disappear if she held it too tight. It wasn't much, just honey, but to us, it felt like gold. That same afternoon, I heard voices out front. Mama was already on the porch, talking soft and gentle to someone, and when I peeked around the corner, there stood Mrs. Caldwell from down the road, her hair pulled tight in her usual bun, looking tired and frail, clutching a small basket. Folks didn't just visit us anymore, not since Daddy died and the rumors started. But there she was, holding that basket out to Mama like it was something precious. Inside, wrapped neatly in a cloth, was a loaf of fresh-baked bread, still warm, filling the porch with a scent I'd nearly forgotten. Mrs. Caldwell never said much, never smiled much either, but today her eyes were kind. We had a little extra, she said quietly, avoiding Mama's eyes. Thought you might like a taste. Mama reached out slow and took the basket, her eyes swimming with tears she refused to shed. They didn't say nothing else, just nodded softly to each other like they understood something no words could rightly say. And then Mrs. Caldwell walked away, leaving behind more than just bread. She left behind a spark, small but steady, flickering back into our lives. That night, supper felt different. Mama sliced the bread carefully, spreading honey over each piece like she was painting a masterpiece. Eli smiled as he took a bite, nodding gently. Mama sat quiet, watching us eat, and then slowly, she reached out, laid her hand on Eli's shoulder, and said softly, "Thank you." It wasn't just for the honey or the bread. It was for staying, for being there, for not letting the darkness swallow us whole. Then, suddenly, I don't even remember who started it. Eli said something funny, just a small joke about the honey being sweeter than my singing, and before I knew it, I laughed. Lord, I laughed, loud and clear, ringing through the quiet kitchen like music I hadn't heard in years. Eli's eyes brightened up, and even Mama cracked the tiniest smile, the first I'd seen since Daddy left us. It felt like sunshine after weeks of rain, like taking a breath after being underwater too long. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that sound, the simple, clear joy of laughter, the feeling of something lifting inside me, even if just for a moment. It was right then that I understood something important. Life don't heal all at once. It comes back slow, one spoonful of honey, one loaf of bread, one quiet kindness at a time. After that, things didn't magically fix themselves. We were still poor. We still missed Daddy every day. But the laughter stayed quiet and careful at first, then steadier. Eli started singing while he worked again. Mama hummed softly in the kitchen. And I found myself dreaming once more. Not about big, impossible things, but about simple joys, about helping others the way Mrs. Caldwell helped us. I guess hope is like that. It waits quiet in the background until you're ready, then reaches out gentle, reminding you it never really left. Reminding you there's always another chance, even after the hardest losses, if you've got just enough courage to take it. It was early summer when I finally faced the box. Mama had kept it tucked away, hidden at the back of the pantry behind jars of preserves and empty flour sacks. I'd always known it was there, but I never had the courage to open it. That little cardboard box held everything Daddy had left behind, the last pieces of him we'd been holding onto so tightly. Letters, a pair of glasses with cracked lenses, his old pocket knife, and an old photograph taken before things got so hard. I'd been afraid of touching it, afraid it might break something inside me all over again. But I woke up one morning and knew I was ready. I took the box outside, feeling the warm sun on my shoulders. Eli saw me walk past the porch and nodded, quiet like. He knew better than to ask. Mama was tending the garden, pulling weeds, humming soft hymns again. She saw me too, just glanced once and turned back to the soil. But I felt her silent blessing, felt her strength, her quiet understanding. I walked past the yard, past the field where Daddy had tried so hard to make something grow, and stopped near the creek where I'd spent so many hours just sitting, listening to the water run, wondering if my life would ever be something more than just surviving. I sat down on the bank, grass damp under me, heart pounding gentle but steady. I took a deep breath and opened the box. The first thing I saw was Daddy's pocket knife, worn smooth from years of being held in his calloused hands. I ran my finger along the blade, careful like. Memories rushed back, him whittling little animals for us kids, telling stories under the stars, promising things would get better. They never really did, but that wasn't his fault. I forgave him right then, not just for leaving, but for being human, for breaking under the weight of a life that wasn't fair to nobody. Next, I pulled out the photograph. It was faded, worn at the edges, but I could still see as clear as day. Daddy smiling, Mama Logan, me and my sisters barefoot and carefree, long before hunger or heartache touched us. I felt tears slip down my face, warm and gentle. Not bitter tears, just the quiet kind you cry when you finally realize what you've been holding onto so tight, and that it's all right to let go. I stood slowly, holding that picture close, feeling a peace spreading through my bones. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and did something I'd never thought I'd have the strength to do. I set that picture back in the box and gently placed it in the creek. It floated slow, bobbing softly, then caught the current, drifting away little by little. It wasn't about throwing Daddy away. It was about letting him rest. Letting me rest, too. I forgive you, I whispered, watching the box disappear around the bend. And I forgive me, too. In that moment, standing by the water, I felt lighter, like something inside me that had been tangled up tight finally loosened. I understood that the past ain't something you can outrun or bury. It's something you carry gently, without bitterness, without regret. It shapes you, sure enough, but it don't have to break you. I realized right there, clear as the sky above me, I wanted to live. Not just survive, but truly live. With open hands, an open heart, and no more ghosts haunting my steps. When I walked back home, the world felt different. Eli was waiting on the porch, eyes soft with understanding. Mama met my gaze with quiet pride, nodding once, knowing without words. And I just smiled, knowing it was finally okay to move forward. Without pretension, without regret, just forward, into whatever life still had waiting for me. It was time. I chose to live again, fully and completely. And that choice, well, honey, it changed everything. You know, looking back on those days now, I realized that the hardest seasons of my life gave me something precious, though Lord knows I never would have asked for them. Back then, hunger wasn't just about empty bellies, and loss wasn't just about the folks we missed. It was about feeling alone, forgotten, wondering if anyone noticed how hard you were trying. But time, well, it has this funny way of changing your view. From where I sit now, rocking slow on my porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset, I see things a bit clearer. I learned, most of all, that you can live through almost anything if your heart stays open. It don't mean you won't break. You'll break plenty of times. But I found that hearts are tougher than you think. They got a way of mending if you let 'em. You see, life ain't never promised to be fair. It ain't never promised to be gentle. But it does promise something. It promises that even after the darkest night, morning always comes. And when it does, if you've made room for it, joy sneaks back in soft, shy, and quiet at first, but steady as the dawn. People these days, they spend a lot of time waiting on things. Waiting for life to be easier, for love to feel safe, for happiness to land on their doorstep like it's owed to them. I was that way once too. Waiting on daddy to come home, waiting on neighbors to help, waiting on somebody else to fix what was broken. But here's what I learned the hard way: life moves on, with or without your permission. It don't wait for you to feel ready. If you sit around waiting, honey, you'll spend your whole life watching from the window. So I started living. Not big and grand, mind you, just simple, true things. I learned that helping someone else can heal you better than waiting for help to arrive. I learned that the smallest kindness, a smile, a piece of bread, a spoonful of honey, can change someone's world. It surely changed mine. And maybe that's the secret, to not wait until your pantry's full, your pockets heavy, or your heart completely healed. Maybe the secret is to live right now, as you are, scarred and hopeful, hurt and brave all at once. I used to think being strong meant never crying, never admitting how scared or tired you are. But real strength, I came to find, is being able to cry, then dry your eyes and keep moving. It's about making peace with your past, not letting it chase you down every road you walk. It's about forgiving yourself for surviving even when others didn't, for loving even when your heart's still sore. Folks think wisdom's complicated, but it ain't. It's just truth learned the hard way, whispered quietly when nobody's watching. Like knowing the taste of hunger makes food sweeter. Knowing the ache of loneliness makes friendship richer. Knowing loss makes love something you hold on to gently, gratefully. It's not wisdom you preach, it's wisdom you live. I reckon that's what I really want you to know, more than anything. Life don't wait, darling, and neither should you. Stop waiting on perfection. Stop waiting on apologies or permission or some perfect moment that ain't ever gonna come. Maybe it's time you stopped looking over your shoulder at what you lost and start looking forward to what you can still gain. Maybe it's time you stopped being afraid to truly live. That's what life taught me anyway. And now, sitting here watching another day slip quiet into night, I understand. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Not because life gave me everything I asked for, but because I learned to cherish everything it gave, even the hard things, especially the hard things. Maybe, just maybe, it's your turn now to take what you have, scars and all, and start living. Because believe me, darling, you deserve it. And it's never too late to start. If you've been sitting with me this whole time, listening to an old woman ramble about days long past, I just want to say thank you. Not many folks have patience for slow stories anymore. Everyone's rushing, running to someplace else. But you stayed. And that means something to me. More than you know. As I sit here now, watching my grandbabies chasing fireflies in the dusk, Logan like there ain't no tomorrow, I see it clearer than ever before. The story I just told you isn't really about the past. Not entirely. No, darling, it's about right now. It's about every moment we have, precious and fleeting, as those little lights my grandkids chase through the grass. It's about not waiting for tomorrow to cherish the people beside you. It's about understanding that love, real, honest-to-goodness love, never leaves us, not completely. It stays quiet as the evening breeze, gentle as a whispered prayer. Folks ask me sometimes if I believe in true love. They wonder if it's something that comes back to you, even after years apart or roads that diverge. And I always smile soft and say the same thing, honey, love never truly leaves. It stays in the air you breathe, the songs you hum, the stories you pass down. And yes, I think real love finds its way back. Maybe not always the way you imagined it would, but somehow it returns. It comes home. I know it, 'cause sometimes late at night, when everything's quiet and still, I swear I hear voices from those old days, Logan soft in the kitchen. I feel a warm hand brush mine, so familiar, yet impossible. And just for a heartbeat, I think maybe, just maybe, Daddy remembers. Maybe Mama knows I finally understood every sacrifice she ever made. And maybe Eli, Lord, sweet Eli, maybe he still remembers too. Remembers a skinny, barefoot girl who was too shy to say thank you, too afraid to admit how much he meant. Sometimes it feels like love lingers, right there in the spaces between sleep and waking, waiting for you to notice, whispering quietly, I'm still here. You see, the past isn't ever really gone. It lives on in how you treat people today. It lives in the kindness you give away without a skin for a thing in return. It's in how you forgive, even the ones who hurt you, and especially yourself. It's in every little bit of grace you share, every hand you hold tight, every table you set, no matter how empty the pantry. So, as my grandchildren grow up, and maybe someday listen to these very words, here's what I want Em and you to know. Life ain't ever gonna be perfect. There's always gonna be storms, always gonna be loss, always gonna be hunger of some kind. But what matters most ain't how much food you have, or how much money sits in your pockets. It's about who's beside you, who you choose to love, who you help when you don't have much yourself. And maybe most of all, it's about learning how to let go of hurt and hold on to hope. To believe that no matter how dark the night, morning always comes again. Love always comes again. Not because life promises to be easy, but because it promises that you're never truly alone, as long as you keep your heart open and gentle enough to let love in again and again, as often as it knocks. So, I'll leave you with just one question, something I still ask myself some nights, sitting on this porch, watching fireflies dance their way home. Do you believe real love comes back, too? Maybe you felt it. Maybe you're still waiting. Or maybe, just maybe, it's been waiting on you. Whatever you feel tonight, know this. You're loved, darling, more deeply and fully than you probably realize. And who knows? Maybe someone, somewhere, is thinking of you tonight, wondering if you remember, hoping that you do. Because sometimes, sitting here watching the world settle quiet, I swear to you, it feels like he still remembers me.